Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
And here's the twist.
Introducing Axios co-founders and Axios CEO Mike Allen and Jim Vandehei.
Hello, DC. Thank you so much for coming. Please come on in. Pretend this is church. You're going to come on down front. I'm Mike Allen, co-founder of Axios, and this is one of our favorite weeks of the year in DC, Axios AI+. And love this crowd and appreciate your being here for our first Axios AI+ Takeover Week. It's our fourth annual Axios AI+. We're gonna have 3 days of great conversations across business, policy, and tech. For those of you who, I guess I should get in the shot here, for those of you who are watching us virtually around the world, we'd love to have you watch live tomorrow, axios.com/events. But tonight is fun. Tonight is for conversation. We want you to ask sharp questions, and we're gonna be covering jobs. We've had a great conversation backstage, always a great indication we're gonna have a fun event. Jobs, investment, local economies. We thank Anthropic for making this event possible. We've really enjoyed getting to know the team from Anthropic. You probably saw the piece that Jim and I did this morning about the Anthropic Economic Index, learning curves. And our column was about AI fluency. And I can tell you that because you're in the room, you're already ahead of the learning curve.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm in the simulation when I'm in DC because I feel like we debate everything on Capitol Hill except for the most important topic facing humanity, which is artificial intelligence. There's a reason we cover it a lot. There's a reason we use it a lot. We think it's that transformative. That report that Mike was talking about this morning, very clear already. If you're really AI fluent, you're jumping way ahead of your peers. That matters if you're an individual, a team, a company, or even a community. Usage of Anthropic, of Claude in DC alone is 4x what you would expect it to be based on population. And I think even communities that are quicker to adapt it are going to race ahead of others. And so as a journalistic institution, we're trying to shine a light on that. I think one of the cool things in our partnership with Anthropic is they are truth tellers on the topic, right? They talk about the good, the bad, and the problematic parts or potentially problematic parts of AI with superhuman powers growing at this rapid of a rate. And so I think events like this are really important to have candid conversations about the economic impact, about the reason that companies and individuals should use it. We confront it every day, the number of people who are like, ooh, should I use AI? Should I be scared of AI? As a company, like, we're all in on AI. We're all in and turning it into a force multiplier for the work that you do. And I think that's the simplest lens for all of us. If you could think about what do you do and how can you use any technology to make yourself exponentially more valuable, exponentially more indispensable, you'll thrive in the new world. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Anthropic, for making this possible. And let's get on with the show.
Okay. Thank you all. Welcome to Axios AI plus DC.
Please give it up for Axios tech policy reporter Maria Curie.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Maria Curie. I'm a tech policy reporter at Axios. And this is the second of 3 events of Axios' AI plus DC Takeover Week. And this is really a series where we are bringing to you our in-depth reporting on everything AI policy, its impacts on the economy, and society at large. These week's events are really meant to set up our main stage events on Wednesday. That'll be Axios' 4th annual AI Plus Summit here in DC. And we have an amazing lineup of speakers. We have Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, Senator Mark Warner from Virginia. We have Meta President Dina Paul-McCormick, and so much more. You won't want to miss it. If you already are here, then that means you're registered for tomorrow's event. All you got to do is show up. Programming starts at 1:30, and we have a reception in the evening, 7:30 p.m., where we hope that you will join us for some networking and for some drinks. Tonight, we will be hosting some conversations with leaders who are at the forefront of the technological shifts and policy changes happening in Washington, and we're going to explore how AI is transforming the economy and labor markets as we know it. For our first guest, please join me in welcoming North Carolina Representative Deborah Ross to the stage. Hi, Congresswoman, thank you for being here.
Of course.
So, Congresswoman, I have to just start by asking what one of our co-founders, Jim Vanda, had just brought up, which is that Congress is debating everything except AI, one of the most transformative and life-changing issues of today. What's your initial reaction to that?
Well, Congress was debating AI in a very bipartisan way last session of Congress. But then the president decided that everything's okay, he'll take care of it. Just like he's doing with everything else, right? And he issued an executive order saying that no more state laws, but Congress may not act either. And then just recently he decided Congress should act, but not too much. And so we're just starting to debate some of this legislation this session, including in the Judiciary Committee. We just got a notice this week that we're going to start debating this.
Right, and the White House is targeting red and blue states on the AI regulation that they're passing. We were the first to report that, for example, bills in Utah were blocked by the White House. Just a simple letter was sent to leaders there. What's at stake if states are preempted before Congress passes a strong national framework?
Well, what is at stake is really public safety. And we had a great hearing on this in the Judiciary Committee. I have to give the Judiciary Committee credit for this, to talk about if Congress doesn't act, can states act on their own? And, you know, the Constitution reserves a lot of power to the states in particular areas. One of those areas is public safety. And so we have seen red and blue states regulate deep fakes, regulate election interference, regulate whether a chatbot can be your psychiatrist, because we've seen kids who have literally committed suicide because of their interaction with AI. And we had parents in the Judiciary Committee when we were talking about this. And so states haven't gone and taken on all of AI, but they have taken on, in particular, public safety issues.
Yeah. You do have House leaders and the White House itself saying they want a bipartisan solution. They want to work with Democrats on a national framework. Where is there any common ground, and how do you see those negotiations playing out?
So there's a tremendous amount of common ground. Last session of Congress, there was a bipartisan AI committee that was set up. I was not on it, but my colleague from North Carolina, Valerie Foushee, was on it. And we had two highly qualified members, Congressman Obernolte, a Republican who worked for Nintendo, and then Congressman Ted Lieu, who has a computer science background. And they agreed on so many ways that Congress should regulate AI without interfering with its potential. But that was all put on hold when Donald Trump was elected and he decided he knew better.
Is there any common ground today?
Oh, I believe there's a tremendous amount of common ground. There's already been some common ground on deep fakes. I think there could be common ground on election interference. And again, this whole concept of AI as being a medical provider is something that I think a lot of people are worried about.
You mentioned deepfakes. You're a co-sponsor of the Defiance Act. This is a bipartisan bill that would tackle deepfakes, the way they impact women and young girls in particular, another issue that you advocate around. But we hear from a lot of parents around the country, a lot of Republican state legislators, that that's not enough. They want a COSA-like bill with real teeth. And on that, there's a lot of disagreement between the House and the Senate. So when you come down to brass tacks, what's the path forward? Is there really one?
Well, the number one thing we have to do is start really debating and marking these bills up. We have to do the hard work. We've had a lot of hearings. I'm also on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. We've had hearings on AI in that committee. We have to do the work. And when we can come together, and we've already seen, as I said, areas of bipartisan agreement, the great thing is it's been very bipartisan in the states on this regulation. We've got Alabama, we've got Utah. This is not just a blue state, red state issue. This is really a public safety issue.
So you've spoken a lot about protecting creators from having their work used to train AI without consent. What is your proposal for fair compensation? What should that actually look like in practice?
So my proposal is very simple, and it's something that has happened in the entertainment industry for decades, maybe centuries, and it's called a license. If somebody has the right to have their own intellectual property copyrighted and you want to use it, you pay them some small amount of money, or maybe a large amount of money depending on what you want to do with it, for the right to do it. It is not a hard thing. But there are folks who are doing AI who don't want to basically pay content creators who have a right to their works. Anthropic learned this the hard way. They lost a lawsuit. And now they are the ones who are most interested in setting up fair rules of the road. I'm not here to say that they're perfect about this, but you know, at least they were willing to admit that they were wrong when they lost the lawsuit. And we've got to protect content creators, or else we're not going to have content. We're just going to have these loops of the same thing over and over, like elevator music, for virtually everything that we consume.
I'm wondering how far apart Democrats such as yourself in the White House are on this issue as well. So the framework that they sent over to Congress last week, it basically says that the Trump administration believes that training of AI models on copyrighted materials does not violate copyright laws. They're essentially saying Congress shouldn't legislate around this and leave it to the courts.
They're just flat out wrong. And, you know, shock of shocks, they believe in violating the Constitution. Copyright and intellectual property is in the Constitution before the Bill of Rights. It is, think about Benjamin Franklin, an inventor. Why do you think this was in the Constitution? Because the King of England took their things away. Well, King Trump can't take their things away. We will lose our competitive edge if innovators are not able to monetize things that they have copyrighted.
And they're essentially saying, well, okay, leave it to the courts. This should just be litigated. Correct me if I'm wrong, but how does that square with your Protect Working Musicians Act, which is about updating antitrust law so that there is more strength in numbers when these players go to court?
So small copyright owners, small innovators shouldn't have to go to court to fight against behemoths that have lawyers who are trying to crush them and take their work. And by the time that litigation goes through, the work is already out there in so many places you can't recapture it. That's what Anthropic learned. My Protecting Working Musicians Act would say that musicians could band together and not violate antitrust to be able to negotiate with the big labels, with Spotify, with whoever is using their materials, and let them get one lawyer or one law firm that represents all of them so that they can get a license and they can get paid for their work. And that is just, I mean, again, it is bedrock in our Constitution. It is, why would anybody create things, blood, sweat, and tears, and then just give it away to somebody else who is going to monetize it? The time that you don't have to pay for something is when you're not making money off of it. When you're using it for educational purposes, that's called fair use. But if you're going to take somebody else's thing and make money off of it, you gotta pay for it.
Congresswoman, just listening to your responses, it does seem like there is a lot of distance right now between Democrats in Congress and the White House, even though these people do want to work with Democrats on this. Last week, when this framework came out, I noticed that a lot of House Democrats signed on to a bill to repeal the Trump administration's executive order on AI, and you were not one of them. Why is that?
Because the executive order doesn't have hardly any force. I mean, we're going to have another executive order when you have the next president. What I want is I want Congress to pass legislation, and it is much more bipartisan about protecting creators than you would think. I've served on the Intellectual Property Subcommittee of Judiciary ever since I came to Congress. One of the times when we completely agree across party lines is when we are going to protect creators, because we all understand that the United States edge is in innovation. And when we tell people when they create something that they're not going to be able to reap the benefit of that, we lose everything that makes this country attractive to the best and the brightest.
Yeah. The midterms are coming up, you're up for re-election, and there's a lot of AI PAC money out there for candidates on both sides of the aisle. How are you viewing that pot of money, especially as you compare it to voter sentiment and grassroots efforts? And how might that impact negotiations with Republicans on the Hill?
Well, I think that people are starting to see what happened in all these primaries, and they're very, very distrustful of AI money. People are very distrustful of AI to begin with. I am not. I'm from the Research Triangle. I've seen incredible things that AI can do, particularly in the sciences. I mean, it just blows your mind. But people are distrustful because they don't understand it, they don't trust it, and then they see AI trying to take over our elections, choose candidates, and I think it's really going to backfire.
Yeah. What are you hearing from voters specifically on the issue of data centers?
They don't like them.
Do you think there should be a moratorium? What is the actual policy solution for that? That's going to resonate with voters.
I think
in
we
elections.
need real regulation of data centers with full information about their utility needs, what they're going to do to the infrastructure. I've been involved in several conversations about best practices for how to deal with data centers. Clearly, they should not be in greenfield areas. They should more be in brownfield areas. They should pay for their own electricity. Ratepayers shouldn't have to absorb those costs. But we really need kind of an ideal framework for doing this. There are some states, back to the states, that are doing some really good and innovative work here. And I think this is a time when Congress might learn from the states.
On an issue that is so emotional, though, is that the winning message, or is it just easier to say moratorium?
Well, anybody can say moratorium, but there's not going to be a moratorium. Congress isn't going to pass a moratorium on data centers. I'd prefer to find best practices, because Congress isn't going to create a moratorium. However, I am absolutely in favor of local governments saying, nope, our zoning laws say you can't have a data center. And that is happening around my district and in North Carolina, and it is absolutely the right of local government to control those zoning laws, and the AI data centers can't do anything about it, and that is just fine.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for your time. That is all the time that we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Introducing our View from the Top moderator and Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nicholas Johnston. I'm the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for joining us today in one of the biggest rooms I've ever played in. I think this is in the middle of a really awesome week for us, going deep on, I think, one of the biggest topics the entire humanity faces right now, which is AI. And so we're very grateful for you joining us tonight on our second night of programming. And of course, don't forget to join us again tomorrow for a full day of our AI Plus Summit. Tons of great conversations. Also hugely grateful for all of our partners at Axios. Nothing we do at Axios is possible without the support of our partners. The investments in journalism we make around the country, convening great conversations like this. So huge thanks to Anthropic for making today's conversation possible. This very important conversation about AI and the economy possible. And so I'm very excited to welcome to the stage from Anthropic, their head of economics, Peter McQuarrie. Peter, welcome to AI Plus DC. How are you, sir?
Hey,
great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Have a seat. I think to start, big picture, you're an economist, but you work at a giant AI company. So tell us about that, your role and what you do.
Yeah, so I joined Anthropic about, I don't know how many, 9 months. It's hard to keep track of how quickly things are moving, to help build out this economic research program. And our motivation is to understand the broad economic implications of this transformative technology. And the thing that really motivated me to join Anthropic was this recognition that AI is poised to have large but uncertain impacts on the labor market, on productivity, on growth, for a number of reasons. It's a general purpose technology, adoption has been very fast, it's improving very rapidly, and it can even help to automate aspects of innovation itself. So this innovation in the method of innovation represents a source in your favorite economic model that can generate very rapid growth. And against that backdrop, there's a lot of uncertainty. And what Anthropic was doing even before I joined was developing the building blocks for tracking usage and diffusion of AI in real time all around the world and within the US. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to help policymakers and the public navigate this transformative moment.
You are here this afternoon with one of my favorite things. You bring the gift of data. So start to unpack what the research has started to say. What are you starting to learn?
Yeah, so we put out a report this morning, actually, our fifth economic index report labeled Learning Curves. We were interested in this question of, do people who have been using Claude for longer, are they interacting with Claude differently than those who signed up today? And even after 6 months, we note clear differences in how people use Claude. So the longer tenured users are more likely to use Claude for work-related reasons in more sophisticated ways, more likely to use Claude as a thought partner, iterating and getting feedback. And interestingly, all told, more successful at getting value out of the model.
What does that mean then if we're to take a step back for the economy? You've been at Anthropic 9 months, so like long enough to maybe get trend lines now you're starting to see.
Yeah, so I guess taking a step back from this report we released, I would this points in the direction of it being another skill bias technology, that it might potentially reinforce differences in outcomes among those who have higher or more skills at getting value out of these tools, and that could have uneven implications in the labor market. Now, you asked about what we're seeing over time.
Right.
About a year ago, we documented that roughly a third of all jobs in the US economy had at least a quarter of the tasks associated with those jobs showing up in our data. Usage is diffusing throughout the economy very rapidly. That number has now risen over the past year to 50%. And more broadly, diffusion is spreading rapidly within the US, much faster than past technologies in the 20th century.
I want to get into the bigger impact of that, but I want to pause because you used a word that I am thinking about a lot in AI, especially when I talk about it in our newsroom, and that's task versus job. How do you think about how AI spreads into the economy as it changes or impacts tasks? And how should we think of that differently as opposed to when we view it like as an employment picture, it'll change a job?
Yeah, so I think the lesson of history is that new general purpose technologies will oftentimes automate discrete tasks or aspects of our work. And in some instances, this means that jobs will go away. In other instances, this will mean that the particular bundle of things that you do in your job will shift, and new types of jobs will be created. And in general, economists like using this task-based framework because, exactly as you say, it decouples this idea of the discrete action that the model or the machine can automate versus what humans do and the value that they bring in their jobs.
Does the research get so granular where you can make a distinction between a task or a job impact? I mean, do you look at, say, like this many millions of jobs might be gone, or this many millions of jobs might be different?
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, we put out a report trying to wrestle with this question of, based on what we see in the data, how is that showing up in the real world in terms of labor market impacts? And the first point that we make in the report is that there is a distinction between the theoretical exposure that these large language models have to different knowledge work jobs, that basically anything that a computer do, in principle, Claude and other large language models would be able to do those tasks. What we see in practice is that people and businesses are actually bringing a very small subset of tasks to the model. And then what we were really interested in was asking, what types of jobs have tasks that the model is really good at, where people are automating it, and where Claude is being used for work-related reasons?
Right.
We think that those three characteristics are most likely to point in the direction of displacement effects to the extent that they might materialize. The second finding of that paper is that there isn't much impact yet, so we're still in the early days of this transformative technology, which is why it's important that we track real-world adoption and diffusion.
It seems like you're bridging that gap between the theoretical impact and the real impact. As you begin to study that, what are you seeing that gap to be? How big will this impact end up being in reality, not theory?
Yeah, so I think on that front, there's incredible uncertainty, and there is a rich debate both about what impact is there already in the labor market. So there's some suggestive evidence, this nice paper, Canaries in the Coal Mine by Eric Bryn-Hofson and other co-authors, that documents that, for some young workers in AI-exposed roles, it does look like hiring rates and employment trajectories have been weaker since the advent of ChatGPT. On the other hand, you have analyses out of the Yale Budget Lab that argue that the rate of churn and disruption in the labor market is no different today than it was in recent years. I think it's hard to get a handle on what's on the horizon, and to be honest, most of our work today has been focused on tracking usage and diffusion and making sense of the impacts already. But a big motivation for the year ahead is
more research. We'll bring you back here maybe in a year, and we can solve all.
Well, hopefully
that
before
puzzle.
then, because it's moving very quickly.
I think that speaks to the importance of that research, and I guess the utility of it is like we're here in Washington, where a lot of folks will probably be writing the policy, having a huge amount of input on the government response to this. With that sense of uncertainty and what the research is showing, what's your advice to them? What should they take away from this?
Yeah, so I think it is important to recognize how transformative this technology might be. One of the forward-looking analyses that we did in November was to ask, based on the efficiency gains that we see in our data, what might this imply about labor productivity growth over the next decade if those efficiency gains spread throughout the economy? And the number that we came up with was about 1.8 percentage points per year increase in labor productivity. That would be a rough doubling of the recent run rate in the US. So big impact on the horizon.
It sounds like a small number, but that's a huge number.
It's a huge number. It would basically bring us back to the late 90s, early 2000s productivity boom. And, but that's current models, and these models are getting better, and adoption might actually be much faster than 10 years. So against that backdrop, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think the recommendation here is twofold. One, focus on the data, and we need a richer picture of AI adoption and diffusion. We recognize that at Anthropic, we have just a limited perspective, and we want more information out in the ecosystem and out in the public to help us navigate this. And then secondly, it's useful to think about the right policy response matched to the situation as it might unfold. So we might not know whether we're in the most disruptive, transformative scenarios a year from now, or if it looks like a more normal general purpose technology of the past, in which unemployment is low, but immense job destruction and transformation under the surface. The policies that are most suitable to the disruptive scenario might not be those that are most applicable to the more prosaic
But start
scenario.
thinking about that now, because the moment is
Exactly.
coming.
It could arrive very quickly, and it's better to be informed and prepared than to be caught.
I think this is the most important, fascinating topic faced by the world right now, and I could talk about it for an hour, but I'm not allowed to because that's flashing at me red. So before we get the hook here, though, I'd love to end on one fun thing. You work at a really cool AI company. How do you use AI in your real life?
So I really like to cook, and one thing I don't use AI for is for my pizza making. I'm very proud of that. But I do like to take photos of ingredients in my fridge and ask Claude to just come up with a recipe. And then I just do whatever Claude tells me.
And so far, so good?
So far, so good. Kid approved.
All right, it's an AI-endorsed use case from someone working at Anthropic. Peter, thank you so much for being here. Huge thanks for Anthropic for making today possible, and we're going to bring Ashley up to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Please welcome Axios Senior Tech Policy Reporter, Ashley Gold.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you tonight. I'm Ashley Gold, Senior Tech Policy Reporter here at Axios. Tonight, we're excited to be hosting the second of our 3 events during Axios AI+DC Takeover Week, a series that's highlighting our in-depth reporting about AI, its effects on the economy, policy, and society as a whole. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation tonight with someone who is shaping technology strategy and leading digital transformation in the DC government. Please join me in welcoming Washington, D.C. Chief Technology Officer Stephen Miller to the stage. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you for having me, Ashley.
Thank you for joining us. Very glad to have a fellow DC resident here on stage with me, and someone who's been working in DC government for decades now. How many years?
So 20 years as an employee, 25 years altogether working for the Office of the Chief Technology Officer here in DC. Yeah.
And
it's a long
did
time.
you ever imagine we'd be at this moment with such incredible AI technology available for a city government when you started that long ago?
When I started that long ago, I didn't think it'd be possible. I would say we really didn't start to think about the possibility of this until 2018, 2019, when we started to realize this was on the verge. We definitely weren't ready for it at that time. But yeah, the idea of what we could do with it started coming, I guess, around that time, yeah.
And how does DC compare to cities around the country, even cities around the world, when it comes to being really technology and AI forward? How would you rank DC?
I would say DC's definitely up there. We get recognized at state level, county level, and city level for the amount of work that we're doing, for the responsible approach that we have towards AI. In February of 2024, we were at the state level about the 13th or 14th that put out an executive order that started to lay out how we were going to implement AI in the district government. So Mayor Bowser laid out a vision with me, I think it was February 8th of 2024, and we have made a lot of great strides meeting the goals that we laid out in that order since then.
So in general, Bowser's government and your fellow city employees have been pretty embracing of AI. They've been pretty pro-AI in government. Why is that?
So a lot of it is that we laid out how they can responsibly implement it, and that we're not leading with no. We're always leading the conversations with what is it going to take to get this to yes? How is it that I can reduce friction to responsibly put this in place? So helping agencies to understand the data they're going to put into the tools, helping agencies to understand the use cases that we've already started talking about with other cities, other counties, other states. And it's really been exciting. There's a lot of good ideas that are out there. Sometimes they started out as bad ideas, but we were able to, kind of mold them into something that could be impactful. And that's the main thing. We ask of every agency to go through the process of determining, is this tool going to have a benefit for the people that are paying for it? Well, who pays for it? The residents of the district. So value for the residents of the district is the #1 thing that we're looking for in every single AI tool that we're putting out there today.
So the average district resident, I'm sure there's quite a few here tonight, although some of you probably live in Maryland and Virginia. When you go to the DC state government, what's like the most common way a resident might be interacting with AI that your office has facilitated?
Sure. The most common way is if you call 311 today, the first voice you hear is AI asking what you're calling about. And that AI is then teeing up a human call taker to handle your call. It's grading them in real time based upon what you said your intent was. It's double checking that intent is still the actual intent. So you may have started with, I have a question about trash pickup, which actually turns into something like bulk pickup. Well, the AI is going to help that human call taker pivot. And again, it's going to start scoring them based upon, did you hit these beats? There's obvious ones on everyone. We want the call taker to say their name. We want to thank them for calling 311. But once you start getting into the specific service types, we're running quality assurance checks that they're meeting everything that we expect for that service type. And then at the end, we have an AI tool that's going to follow up and ask if you want to take a survey, and we'll go through that. And what's exciting about this use case is that it's supporting our workforce. It's not replacing anyone on our workforce. It's making us better. So it is delivering value to the residents of the district because it's simplifying and expediting that 311 request and making sure we got it right the first time. Yeah.
So that's one city service that you would say has meaningfully improved because of using AI.
Yes.
What is one maybe you're working on right now that you're not quite sure the AI will live up to its promise yet?
Some of the stuff that we look at is we think AI can be helpful in translations, right? So we're the nation's capital. We're a global capital, if I'm being honest, right? So everyone comes to the city from everywhere across the world, and they speak every potential language that exists in the world. Our 911 system, for example, though, is really built to support at its core maybe 7 or 8 languages, and then we have like third-party language access lines that would get involved. But depending on how niche that language is, you could be waiting 5 minutes before a translation is available. And then if there's a lot of calls that are coming in, even in a common language, you may have to wait because they're going to prioritize the translation services on the triaging the calls. But with AI, we're hoping realistically we could have automated translation in real time for any call taker on the 911 side, on that public safety side. Super exciting use case there.
What is the biggest barrier to getting these AI systems into place, into the DC government systems, and getting them deployed? Is it the tech itself? Is it the procurement process, or is it politics?
So it can be a mix. So if it's Sometimes procurement is an issue, but it's really only if we haven't really engaged with that vendor before, right? So you have to go through the process that's unique to every city, every state, every government entity has its own unique procurement process, its own rules. So if it's an initial procurement of a new cutting-edge innovative technology, sometimes procurement can take a little bit longer. Other aspects are going to be, like, we do want to understand that value that we're going to deliver for the residents, because it is the #1 value that we're looking for, that Mayor Bowser and I are looking for on every AI tool. So it's getting to that alignment. Again, I don't want to say no, because every tool theoretically can find a benefit for the resident. If it's helping us on the back end to be more efficient at reading our email, that can be beneficial to the resident, because now I can handle more email in a given day. I get a lot of email in a given day. But then the next part of it that tends to be kind of tricky is sustainability. So we want to make sure that if we put a high value tool in place, that we can keep that high value tool. And we can't play number games where it's like this is going to cut our overtime budget, because an overtime budget can't be used to buy things. That has to be reprogrammed. We have to go through a whole process with city council, with the mayor's office to get that kind of thing approved. So finding ways to make sure a tool would be sustainable from day one is one of the things that takes a little bit of time. The last one is alignment with privacy and cybersecurity standards. So, we're not California. We don't have super strict data privacy rules like they have, but we do want to make sure that if we're giving custody of our data to a company, that they're going to handle that data responsibly. We also want to make sure that they meet the minimal security standards that we try to meet with our tool sets. So that's going to be just making sure, like, my risk management framework would align us with NIST 800.37.53 and SOC 2, a couple other things in that space. So we're going to want to make sure that if something isn't already on a contract, if something isn't already related to technology that we use today, like a deployment in Azure or AWS might be easier than a straight deployment from OpenAI.
Because you've worked with Azure
Because we've
before.
worked with Azure, and we've worked with Amazon. We've worked with Microsoft, and we work with Amazon on making sure we have security alignment already on the base platform. So utilizing a tool in those spaces is sometimes a little bit quicker than bringing something new in. But we're finding is that we can get alignment on just about everything. So we're just pushing to make sure that sustainability piece is there, that benefit for the resident is there, that our workforce understands how to use the tools appropriately and ethically, and that the outcomes are actually being improved. That we're being faster, we've simplified the government, or we're being more reliable. Yeah.
Something our founders were talking about at the beginning of this program is how if you are experimenting with AI tools and you're trying to get better at working with them, you're already at more of an advantage than the rest of the workforce, maybe compared to your colleagues. What has that experience been like within your office and explaining to your employees that this is something that you're really invested in and you want them to train themselves up on it? What's the reaction been like? So
it's interesting. This is my communications team. They convinced me to put my face on everything, so that they see that there's a human involved in this. So
that seems good.
Yeah, it's okay. 38,000 people now have received mandatory AI training in the district. We're working through completion. We're going to try to work completion, I think, mid-May. But a lot of people come up to me and they talk to me about, thank you for the training. Now I understand what you guys are talking about. Now I understand why you blocked access to some tools.
Which tools?
We've blocked access to a lot of tools. But I would say, in general, we have enterprise tools like Copilot. We have enterprise tools, Anthropic. We have enterprise, a couple other smaller tools, but we tend to block things like, what's an example? Otter AI is an example of something that we blocked, because that would be recording and transcribing deliberative conversations in our Teams meetings, so we're not a big fan of that. But what I'd say is we have varying degrees of blocks, and training the workforce now on what those varying degrees mean, it is just really asking permission. The other side of it, though, is I do want you using Claude. I do want you using Copilot. I do want you using OpenAI. These tools are super, super useful. I don't want you using the public version of it. I want you using the version where I have you logging in and we can control things like data loss protection, or we can control the level of credits that you're eating into, tokens that you're eating into, those kind of things. So those are the sustainability points that we try to make sure that we can hit. I'll say we've opened up some coding tools. The first day, one of our developers depleted a month's worth of credits, just kind of messing around with it a little bit.
Gotta be careful there.
Got to be careful there for sure. So the training kind of covers these beats though. So it's letting them know that we're not stopping you from using these tools. We want you to use the right tools at the right time. So it's been great. So out of the 38,000, I think we're somewhere 25% are currently trained, and almost every DC government building I walk in, someone recognizes me from the training video, and it's great.
Well, it's great that you put your face on it then.
I guess, yeah. They convinced me to do it, so I did it, yeah.
Got to put a human face to all this robot learning. But
that's right.
And what's some feedback you've heard from employees or sectors within the DC government where there's hesitation or pushback or some fear of using AI for normal government processes?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is they're concerned that we'll be replacing them. They're concerned that AI is not there to help them, it's there to take their place. That's not our intent. So our intent is, people want to deal with human beings. If you're having a crisis and you're depending upon the government, we want you to trust DC government. We would love it if you trusted Claude. We'd love it if you trusted OpenAI, but in order to help build that trust on top of it, it's having a trustworthy person that's being accountable for those tools on top of it. So that's what we hear a lot about, is that people are happy that's how we're approaching this. They're also happy that we're working on some of the stuff we talk about, like workforce improvement programs, training programs. We're working with partners on that, just to make sure that everyone knows how to use the tools, because their jobs will change. They'll be more available. If AI, if AI is helping someone compress an 8-hour workday into 4 hours, well, that means there's 4 more hours that they could be doing something. And it's getting them to understand what these tools can do, and getting them then to help us discover more eventual use cases that can, again, speed up that day as well. It does get to the point where we're creating hopefully something that is simpler, something that is fairer, and something that is faster.
Have you drawn any hard red lines on how AI can and cannot be used in DC city government?
So we don't really have too many hard red lines. We want to make sure that we're doing it in the way that the residents want us to do it. So, when we look at, residents are very focused. We just went around, Mayor Bowser did budget engagement forums, right? So we're getting ready for our fiscal year 27 budget, which will kick off on September 1st. But we're getting ready to go through the process of finalizing that budget. And Mayor Bowser goes out and she does budget engagement forums across the city, and everyone wants investments in public safety and in education. And there are some light red lines in those spaces, but it's based upon what we're hearing from the residents. Because again, we want to focus on the value that we're delivering to them. And it does come down to, in the public safety space, making sure that we're not using AI to develop suspect lists. I think that's not what residents want. And then in the education space, that we're not replacing teachers with AI, that we're not grading papers solely with AI, that we're using AI in places where it can be objective and not subjective. And that's really what a lot of that feedback that we've had in our community engagement as well around AI.
How has AI changed how people work in DC and the general workforce? So with the general workforce, the majority of the tooling that they're using would be the Copilot tool, the Copilot chat tool that we rolled out to everyone in the district government. They're using it to improve their writing, to improve their communication. They're using it to ideate on how they can change or transform government services. I think in some cases, they used it to formulate ideas during the budget cycle that we're going through, so we're seeing a lot of that. The higher level use cases that we're seeing in the licensed products, and that's going to be Anthropic Claude, the higher tier versions of Copilot, some OpenAI pieces, things like Kiro. What we're seeing is how it's going to speed delivery to transformation. So I think about this in terms of like, the last big project we did in DC was we replaced our financial system. Our financial system was a mainframe-based tool that was dependent upon a couple of, what do I want to say,
over 70-year-old individuals that were also working with many other governments, and they were basically, you'd get 3 hours of them this month, Seattle got 3 hours of them this month, like that's how these things were working out. We went through a very long 5-year, $200 million project to replace it with human developers. AI, that's basically done. That won't be a thing anymore. So I'm not saying a complicated project won't take a year or two,
But not 5.
but it won't take 5. And a project wouldn't cost $200 million anymore to implement, because you can basically have 1 or 2 senior level engineers that would normally have a workforce of 5 to 10 juniors behind them. Well, they may not need all those juniors behind them anymore. And those juniors can then be trained and ready to go as seniors. So there's a good waterfall effect there, but we can deliver faster. We can iterate a little bit faster on improvements as well. Vulnerability management is going to be a lot easier. So, when we go through the process, when we identify a security issue, we can pretty quickly use AI to fix that issue and validate that issue pretty quick. So we're very excited about those kind of use cases.
Yeah, well, with that very salient example of how you guys were able to use Claude to, speed up a process, we are out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. But thank you for the great conversation and for joining us tonight.
Sure.
Thank you so much to our audience for coming out tonight. Thanks to those who tuned in on the live stream. You can find all of our coverage of the AI plus DC Takeover Week and find more on our upcoming events on our website. And as a reminder, you're all automatically registered to join us tomorrow at the AI DC Summit, where we have amazing programming all day. The doors open at 1:30 tomorrow. Please stick around, enjoy the reception, and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.